James this year presents Wooden Sodor, Episode 21, Bye Bertie. Thomas's birthday a while back was a huge win for the island of Sodor. Lots of tourists came from all over the world to interview Thomas, Percy, and a bunch of other engines. It was their first time on TV in about 6 or 7 years. James was especially excited. "I can't wait for people to see my splendid coat." The reporters were only planning on doing interviews on the most famous engines, but they also did some on lesser-known engines, like Billy. They also did some interviews on the non-rail vehicles, like Butch and George. But they forgot the most popular road vehicle on Sodor. Bertie the bus was sad that he hadn't been interviewed yet, but he stayed optimistic. "I'm sure they will interview me at some point." But after a while, they still hadn't interviewed Bertie. Still, Bertie remained optimistic. But his mood changed when Billy started bragging to the other engines who hadn't been interviewed. All of the engines just ignored him because they didn't really want to be interviewed in the first place. But when Billy bragged to Bertie, he really rubbed him the wrong way. "Humph," said Bertie, looking very cross. "I'm sure they will interview me at some point." "Really?" laughed Billy. "A bus? Why would they interview a silly red bus?" "They interviewed Bulgy," argued Bertie. "He's even more of a silly red bus than me. Also, you're calling me silly? You know, I vividly remember that you were called Silly Billy at one point." But then Bertie looked over to where Billy was. He had left. Bertie had been talking to air for who knows how long. Bertie sighed. "Maybe Billy is right. Maybe I am a silly red bus." He slowly drove away. Sir Topham Hatt was at Knapford. "Ah, Bertie," he said. "I need you to take these passengers from here to Tidmouth." "Okay," sighed Bertie. "Oh, and one more thing. I do have to ask something of you." But Bertie already drove away. "Wait, Bertie! You forgot your passengers!" "Oh, man," said Sir Topham Hatt. Bertie arrived at the crossing gate. When the gates opened, he started to drive over the tracks, when suddenly the gates closed between him. "Oh, goodness me!" called Bertie. "I'm stuck!" Then Bertie heard an unfamiliar horn. "Oh, no!" cried Bertie. Someone's coming!" Bertie tried hard to push the gates open, but they would not budge. The engine was moving very fast now. Bertie realized he couldn't do anything and closed his eyes. The next day, Sir Topham Hatt was sitting in his office when he heard lots of commotion from outside. "What's going on?" he boomed. "Sir," said Percy, "Bertie hasn't come to the station yet." "I suspect something happened to him," said Thomas. Pondered Sir Topham Hatt. "That's odd." "What's odd?" asked Edward. "I saw Bertie yesterday. I told him to bring some passengers to Tidmouth, but he forgot them and left really quickly before I was able to tell him something." "What were you going to tell him, sir?" "That's not important right now. What's important is that we find Bertie. Then I will tell him what I was going to yesterday. Now you three get back to work. I will set up a search party. We will find Bertie, and there's no giving up." Where am I?" "Silence!" said a voice Bertie hadn't heard before. "Who's there?" called Bertie. "You don't need to know that," said the voice. "But what I will tell you is that I am a 10 out of 10 diesel for devious deeds and brutal strength."